one that's replaced.
Good morning, everybody. You are listening to Breaking Health Barriers with me, Dr. Jack Stockwell. I will be here for a while with you this morning, this Christmas Eve. 2026, welcome to K-Talk, welcome to the stream. I'm not sure how many of you might be present, but I'm still going to do the show that I want to do anyway, as of this morning. The day here before Christmas. My goodness, it's finally here. You wouldn't know it by being outside, would you? So welcome to the whole audience that might be listening this morning. I know the second hour has a much greater population than the first hour, and who can blame you? If you're just tuning in for the first time, I am Jack Stockwell at jackstockwell.com. as well as ForbiddenDoctor.com. The Forbidden Doctor side is the nutrition side of our business. And nutrition is just so vitally important. We just did a heart sound recorder yesterday on a 26, 27-year-old young man. I say young because I'm 75. And who has been taking the supplements that I recommend to strengthen the heart. And he had not surprisingly, he just had a very good looking heart scan. He has a ways to go. It's not completely there yet, but it's so far better than most heart scans that we take of people who are not necessarily consuming the kind of food that would necessarily strengthen their heart. The heart can put up with an awful lot of abuse, decades in fact, which is why you usually don't see heart problems until you've passed retirement age. If you're having problems with your heart prior to retirement age, and by retirement I mean 55 to 65, somewhere in there, you are in for a lot of trouble. And interestingly enough, no organ in the body responds quicker to improved nutrition than the heart does. Just as no organ suffers from malnutrition faster than the heart does. And it seems a little odd in some people's minds for me to use the word malnutrition in the American diet, but I think we probably reign supreme throughout the world, short of the Sudan, short of the Republic of Congo, short of some other sub-Saharan countries, as the leaders, especially in first world countries, of the so-called industrialized first world nations. That's why we're the sickest. We're the sickest because we do not pay attention to what we're eating just as much as we do not pay attention to what we are not eating. And as a result, our body suffers from it. You can't take cream filling of a donut and replace calcium, just as much as you can't enjoy those Christmas treats and use it to take the place of vitamin C. It's just, but what we're really searching for is a full belly. We are a very sensuous, very physically satisfying oriented culture. And as long as our bellies are full, I don't know that we pay a whole lot of attention anymore to what we eat. We do in a sense of guilt because, well, maybe I should have had this or I shouldn't be having this. But that's the thing that we say every day. And it gets to the point where organs in the body will begin to suffer as a result. Now, as I'm rather proud of saying, I'm 75 and I'm still going 100 miles an hour. I was taking care of a new patient last night not after the sun had gone down, after it was just pitch dark outside. Just a wonderful lady who is having a lot of pain on the left side of her head and her neck, and is having TMJ problems on the right side and a feeling of pressure all along the right side, as well as low back pain. What has she done about it? The standard story I hear: I have been everywhere. I have spent all kinds of money. I've been to various people working on my spine, people working on my lymphatic system, people working on my nervous system, this massage person, that massage person. And I said, well, if any one of those, and I can be a smart ass at times, but I said, if any one of those had actually dealt with the real problem, you wouldn't be sitting in my office right now. And when I say, comments like that, they kind of, well, okay, big talker, do something about it. So I do a standard exam and I show them the signs that are present that indicate the misalignment of the spine. And it's hard for a lot of people because they never thought of it before, to relate the misalignment of the spine to their problems. So I'll ask questions. I say, well, what makes your lungs breathe? What makes your digestion digest? What makes peristalsis through the alimentary canal work? What makes your ovaries work? What makes your testicles work? What makes your adrenals work? Is it just automatic? Is it just like a snowball running down the side of the hill, and when it finally hits a tree at the bottom, you're dead and buried? What makes these things work? Well, it's your nervous system. Your nervous system is literally the global system of the human body. Things don't start working, things don't stop working, either directly or indirectly of nervous system control, including digestion, including elimination, including your immune responses. Also, reproduction, sleep, even your personality is under control of the nervous system to one degree or another, that controls the emotions, that controls the hormones, that controls the neurotransmitters. None of this stuff is automatic outside of direct or indirect control of the nervous system. And that's what I work on, is freeing up that nerve sensitivity, nerve response, nervous control of the human body. And where is it outside of the human body in its thickest, most vibrant, most vulnerable form? Right there at the base of the skull, where the brainstem becomes the spinal cord. And the further you get down the spinal cord, the smaller it gets, because of all the nerves coming off at every vertebral level of the spine, wrapping around your body like barrel staves, until it ends up in something called the cauda equina, which is the horsetail. Your cord isn't a solid cord all the way down to the sacrum. Down around towards the end of the thoracic column, the beginning of the lumbars, it spreads out into a bunch of it almost looks like a jellyfish with all these tentacles hanging down that become the nerves that still leave at every level of the spine. And when the spine comes out of balance against gravity due to some kind of a fall or a spill or a slip or something very gentle, it doesn't take a 15-car pileup on the freeway to put your spine out of balance. Those nerves are going to be disaffected to some degree or another, and that disaffection is going to cause them to overwork or underwork. And then coupled with the standard American diet, you're a sitting duck for chronic disease. So I took pictures of this lady, and she had a sizable misalignment, and she remembered some injuries that occurred early in life, childhood. And I said, I said, look at this. I want you to look at this x-ray. You see these bones here? These didn't misalign last night. These misaligned. What started this degeneration in your neck? And she's in her 60s. I said, what started this degeneration in your neck started before puberty. And here's how I can tell. These misshapen bones, these degenerated disc surfaces. Takes a lifetime for this to happen in a spine. Oh yeah, I remember such and such taking place when I was 8 years old. I said, well, that's where it started. And I said, who's pointed this out to you before? And there's a smart ass question because I know the answer. Well, nobody. That's right. Nobody ever pointed this out to you before because whoever took x-rays like this? Well, nobody. Yeah, exactly. And so I figured out what I needed to do based on those films. I have, as I always tell a brand new patient before I work on them, after I've examined them and said, yeah, I think I can, I'm 95% sure I can help you. And here's why. But I have no idea what to do for you whatsoever without film. Because what I'm looking to fix, you cannot feel. It's right down on the surface of the bones at the top of your neck. And there's just too much meat. You can't feel through it. So I need some film. And then I'm going to work on you based on that film. And then when I think I've got it, I'm going to take a little bit more film to make sure I have it. And if there's nothing left, if there's something left, I'm going to go after that. Because that's what you're paying me for. To put that spine back in alignment. And what usually happens is I work on her based on those films. And once I can't feel any resistance left in the neck, which represents the entire spine, because I'm going after her low back pain every bit as much as the pain in her head, from the same contact point, mind you. She stands up and I have her walk around, and she goes, I feel normal. And I said, normal? What's normal? What do you mean normal? Have you ever felt like this before? No, but I'm sure this is what normal feels like. Well, okay, tell me what you're feeling. Well, the pain's gone. Yeah, the pain's gone. Do you feel taller? Well, actually, I do. Well, you are taller. You're at least an inch taller than when you walked in here because your spine just straightened up. What has been habitual muscle tone hypertonicity, muscles too tight for decades, just released. And that's what you're feeling. Now, I want you to sit in this chair here. So she sits down. And like I say to most people, I want you to stand up and sit down 2 times in a row. Please, just do what I say. Stand up and sit down 2 times in a row. And they almost jump out of the chair. And they get this surprised look on their face. And I say, do you feel any lighter and looser? Yes, I do. It's because the muscles are relaxing. Muscles that have been habitually tight for decades. Since that 8-year-old accident that you've grown up with and accept as a normal sensation is now relaxing. Walk around some more. So they walk around a little bit more. How's that low back pain? It's gone. Yeah, it's gone. That low back pain, even though you've got an MRI that shows some nerve root involvement, some what's called ligamentum flavum issues. There's a couple of things in there that indicate a pars defect that you've been told is the cause of your pain. It isn't. None of that stuff was the cause of your pain. What was the cause of pain was habitually tight, low back muscles that don't relax, trying to hold the spine up against a misaligned position, against gravity. It just started relaxing for the first time in decades. And then every now and then, a new patient looking at me when they're trying to figure out what just happened. Well, why don't more people do this? Well, there aren't a whole lot of people that do, I admit that, but most people who address the spine think that they're doing this. And I said, do you know that half the chiropractors in America don't even take an x-ray? They don't even take an x-ray before they attack the spine. To me, that's like going into surgery for whatever, and the surgeon walks up to you before they anesthetize you, and he's got a blindfold on. And he says, don't worry, I know my way around your gallbladder. I know my way around your uterus. Don't worry, don't worry that I'm wearing a blindfold. It's literally like that, I think. I always tell them there's a lot easier ways to make money in chiropractic than what I do. And then I'm always losing patients. I was just looking at the list of new patients over the last 2 months. Half of them aren't even coming in anymore because they don't need to. After I worked on them 2 or 3 or 4 times, they're pain free. And then I tell them I need to see you every several months. I should see you at least once every 6 months to make sure that spine stays in alignment, as often as you would get your teeth checked from the dentist. And some of them come back in, some of them don't till I see them 4 or 5 years later and the symptoms return because they had a fender bender or they slipped on the ice or banged their head under a cabinet or whatever else. So, and then another thing that I hear at least 2 times a day, at least 2, sometimes more, you're not going to retire, are you? No, I don't plan on retiring. I might cut back on my hours because, even though I still think I'm Superman, I kind of get a little tired at the end of the day. But this is too much fun. I have 2 younger brothers, both professionals, been retired for over at least 10 years. And they kind of point out the fact that, hey, Jack, when are you going to retire? Well, what would I do? Play golf? There's an art to what I do, just like there's an art to the kind of work that most of you do, in the sense that the more you do it, the better you get at it. I don't care if you're hanging sheetrock and a plasterer, or laying brick, or software development, or something in the healthcare industry where you're free to do what needs to be done instead of what the bean counters tell you to do, or in your gardening of your home or your whatever you do around the home if you're home-based. The more you do these things, the better you get at them. Well, same thing with addressing the frailties of the human spine, which is very frail. So I just wanted to mention that before I get into these other subjects, because I really get a kick out of what I do. And this is the standard result of the people that I take care of. So this lady that I took care of last night, I always want to know who sent him in there. And she said, well, another chiropractor did. And I said, well, give me his name. I'd like to thank him. She gave me his name. I never heard of him. And once she told him that she was having TMJ problems and pains on both sides of her neck, at the very top of her neck, she said, this chiropractor immediately referred me to you. Well, I'm going to have to let him know. I appreciate that, because what I do is a new patient practice. The only reason my doors stay open, and sometimes, frankly, I worry about it. If I don't have new people coming in, I can't pay the bills because I don't see them very much. I see them a few times and then they're on their way. And more often than not, they refer people to take care of their place, but sometimes they don't. But, and listen, I'm not belly aching. I'm rather proud of what I do. It's just, I've got to have a flow of new people all the time, or I can't stay in business. Now, the other half of the business is nutrition and supplemental support. There were some really bad reports about supplements in the news lately, as there should be, because most of the supplements are crap, absolute crap. And all you have to do is read the label. And if it has scientific chemical names for the vitamins, they are crap. They're just chemical substitutes that are just fractions of the actual whole food vitamin. Mother Nature intended for us to get our nutrition where? From rocks? From tree bark? From ocean water? No. Mother Nature intended for us to get our nutrition from food, primarily the plant kingdom, or something that ate the plant kingdom, that concentrates what's in the plant kingdom into a smaller amount of gram weight so that you can get the nutrition that Mother Nature intended, not from food manufacturers and the like. And I know I'm to some degree preaching to the choir. I say these things over and over again, but I find out I have to. And I have to, I'll see somebody at least once a week, sometimes twice, someone I haven't seen in years, and they've been doing fine. And then all of a sudden, the symptoms they had 5, 6, 7 years ago have returned. And they want to blame it on sleeping on the couch with their head cranked off to the side, or they slipped and fell, or a fender bender, or slipped on the ice, or something else that banged them, and those old symptoms are back. And they think of my clinic first and foremost. Oh, I'll just go see Stockwell again. He got rid of this. Maybe he can get rid of it again. And I'll take care of him. I may have to, depending on how long it's been, I may need to see him 2 or 3 times. And then I won't see him for another several years. Because the spine, once it's put back into its proper balanced state against gravity, will hold the adjustment for a long time. About 1 in 5 people need more constant care than that for several reasons. Nutritional deficiencies, the degree of trauma that caused the misalignment, how long it's been there, and a couple of other factors that might play a role. But most people, I don't let anybody leave on their first visit until they go, wow. And I'll say, well, what are you feeling? Well, I'm not sure I can describe it. Well, how does that neck feel? Oh, it's loose. Yeah. How's the low back feel? Well, I can't feel any pain. How about that knee you came in here limping on? Oh, it's a lot better. Yeah. See, that top bone that sits underneath your skull, that sits on the very top of the spine, the atlas, C1, is not attached to the skull, and it's not attached to the second bone. There's no disc there. Now, they're held together with very tight ligaments, but there's no disc like there is from the second bone down to the sacrum, which makes the spine move as a single unit, just like a snake. Everything moves as one because they're all stuck together with discs. But between the first and second bones, there is no disc, which allows the incredible range of motion, as I'm demonstrating to these streamers. This range of motion is possible only because that top bone floats around on the second bone, smoothly, evenly, without a single sound. Now, as I'm looking backwards over my left shoulder and I rotate my head to look backwards over my right shoulder, there is not a single sound. No clicks, no pops, no scratches, no nothing. When I first came under this care over 35 years ago, the person who was working on me said, turn your head all the way to the left and very slowly turn your head all the way over to the right. And I want you to count every little click, pop, scratch, bump that takes place in that rotation. And from here, for those streamers that can see me, looking over my left shoulder, rotating my head to the right shoulder, I counted over 100 separate noises. Now, 35 years later, not a single sound, not a catch, no pain, nothing. And I attribute this to the fact that my spine has been in alignment for almost half of my age. And I think that's got an awful lot to do with me being as active as I am at 75. Now, this whole month of December, I have had no grains other than brown rice. I have had, and I'm taking a quick inventory here in my memory, I haven't had any grain. I've even given up, as difficult as it is, being the addict that I am, to peanut butter cookies. I have given up peanut butter cookies. I have given up all grains and all added extra sugars. They're gone. Dropped about 10 pounds just from that. And I move around easier. There's less joint stiffness. There's definitely more energy. I don't find the compelling need for a nap in the afternoon as much as I have the last 10 years. And so I'm feeling pretty good. And so the way to live longer, the way to live better, the way to live healthier and happier is you do not want your nervous system interrupted by skeletal misalignments. And you want to make sure that what you eat is the best optimum material you can get from Mother Nature. So I was talking to a lady who is pregnant earlier this week. Well, there's only been 2 days so far. And asking her what her prenatal nutrition is. And of course, she's got a prenatal vitamin from the grocery store. And I said, you know, you're paying me good money to take care of you. And I'm going to give you good advice in return. I'm to a point in my life where I don't compromise. I'm at a point in my life where I have no time to fool around or make things easier for you. But you are poisoning your unborn baby by taking that crap into your body. Now stop it. Well, Dr. Stockwell, what do I do? I want you to take a food-based supplement, a supplement that comes from organic foods. You're supposed to get your nutrition from food. So, of course, I recommend Catalin. I don't know a better whole food vitamin than Catalin. Read the label. There's got to be at least 15 different food sources listed in that label. It's like the vitamin C, Cataplex C. If you go to a pharmacy or the grocery store, whatever else, or health food store, and you buy a vitamin C, it's going to be ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is no more vitamin C than the shell of your automobile is your automobile. There's an awful lot more to vitamin C than ascorbic acid. But because the FDA says that's all there is to it, then, you know, like they know anything about nutrition at the FDA. And so it's considered to be vitamin C. And so you can get vitamin C in 100 or 250 or 500 or 1,000 milligrams. This pill in there that's all ascorbic acid. If you look at the vitamin C product of standard process, that's called Cataplex C, you're going to see 2 or 3 grams. I mean, milligrams. You're going to see 2 or 3 milligrams of vitamin C because the FDA requires a product that purports to be vitamin C to report the ascorbic acid content. Well, ascorbic acid that appears in most foods, especially fruits and vegetables, to some degree or another, the ascorbic acid in there isn't for you. It's a very powerful antioxidant to protect that food from oxidation, which is all a part of the total antioxidant fraud. One of the biggest frauds in nutrition is antioxidants, and I'll have to do I've got a podcast on that at Forbidden Doctor. I'll have to do a show on that sometime to get into that in further detail. But the Cataplex C is only going to show 2, 3, maybe 5 milligrams of ascorbic acid or vitamin C, because the FDA is laying upon it, but you forcing that. But if you look at the ingredients, so this lady that's pregnant, she's only got 6 weeks to go, and she says, well, is there something else I can take besides the Catalin? And I mentioned a couple more things, but I said, you know, the best thing you could possibly do is to eat 2 portions a week of 4 ounces of beef liver, primarily baby calf liver, from a clean animal that was grass pastured with no shots, no herbicides, no pesticides, no hormones, no vaccinations, a clean animal. If you could eat 2, I don't care if you got to drown it in ketchup, if you could eat 2 4-ounce pieces of liver a week, you will be doing a miraculous level of nutrition for your unborn baby with just a month and a half to go. And she committed to it. I said, you ever eaten liver? No. It's going to be a trick. But I would say that to a 90-year-old woman, let alone this early 20s with her second or third child, as well as a man. You want to turn the health profile of your body around, eat 2 4-ounce pieces of liver a week. It is the most, without argument, the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. And why is that? Because the liver in mammals, of which we are one, is the storehouse for so much nutrition that gets inside the human body. And when you have an animal that's being fed what is supposed to be fed, unlike humans, a calf or a cow being raised, or a steer or whatever else, being raised out in the farmland where they have access to grass, flowers, herbs, and clean water, you have some of the most nutritious food on the planet. Now, I've said that to vegetarians. Oh, no, I couldn't eat that. And I said, well, you asked me, I gave you the answer. And then if I'm feeling really adventurous enough when I'm talking to a vegetarian or the most difficult person in the world to turn their nutritional profile around, a vegan, I'll say, that stuff didn't exist before the last century. You can't find it in any country. You can't find records of vegetarianism or veganism except in the smallest of cultures prior to 1900. The thing that made it big in the United States was Post and Kellogg, both religious nut fanatic crazies who had their own little group of followers who believed that sex was dirty and should be left out in the street where we find it. And that if you wanted to live a pure life, you give up sex. You give up drinking, you give up smoking, and you give up sex, like sex is as bad as smoking and drinking. And the way you suppress sexual desire, especially in a man, and the monks learned this in the Dark Ages in Europe, you load them up with carbohydrates and keep meat out of their diet. It suppresses the sexual urge. It suppresses the libido. It's all there in the nutritional archives, what I'm talking about. And so Kellogg and Post invented grain-based cereals that they said, you need to eat this. Give up the beef, give up the pork, give up the chicken, give up the fish, and eat this stuff. This is God's food himself. If God was sitting here at the table with you, he'd be eating a bowl of oatmeal. Get rid of those eggs and bacon. And then that's the way you keep people under control. When people start having sex, and heaven forbid actually enjoy having sex, they could have a tendency to get out of control. Not sexually out of control, but out of control in the sense of coming alive. And when people come alive, they start thinking. And the brain starts working, not because of the sex, but because of the food that increases libido, which is animal products. There's a few herbs, but mostly animal products. I've seen this in hundreds of patients over and over again. And the only way a religion can survive as an organization is to keep the membership under control. And the last thing you want these people feeling is to feel alive, because they begin to be individualistic, and they begin to think, and they begin to re-examine the constructs of their life and the principles upon which their lives are built. And they start thinking, I wonder about this. Where are these feelings of oppression coming from? Now, I'm not being anti-religious. I'm not being anti-spiritual. I'm just telling you what I have seen in hundreds, if not thousands, of patients. When patients eat the foods that Mother Nature intended for us to live or to eat, they come alive. So, I don't know how in the world I got off on this topic, but I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time. So that's the two-pronged approach. JackStockwell.com talks about the structural work. ForbiddonDoctor.com talks about the nutritional work. And when you bring these two dynamics together in your life, you free up that nervous system so your pancreas works right, your kidneys work right, your digestive system works correctly, your ovaries balance the hormones again, your thyroid comes back alive. And then you start feeding these organs. I have patients in their 80s, late 80s, early 90s who stand up straight and walk around with a smile on their face because they got their life back. Now, in the week remaining, towards the end of this month, I'm still offering what I do at half price as a thank you, primarily to the K-Talk audience. And you could either go to jackstockwell.com and you can schedule a consultation, which are free. There's no charge for a consultation. There's no charge until you decide you want me to take care of you. And then, of course, I will expect to be paid just like you expect to be paid for the work you do. And I don't have to see it till January. But the schedule needs to be made before the end of the month because we have to figure out the schedule for January. We try to run at least a month in advance. You can call 801-523-1890, 801-523-1890. And there's not going to be anybody. We'll be checking the phones through this week and next week through the whole holiday. I'm taking more time off between now and January 1st than I normally do because I'm tired. I just would like a little rest. However, I will be available for emergencies. In fact, I've got an emergency this morning at 10. So some of you know me really well. You've been listening to me. Ann, I know you're listening this morning. And Ann, you know which Ann you are. You've been listening since 1995 when I first started at K-Talk. And a lot of other people. I saw the x-ray. I took care of somebody based on the x-rays the other day. The x-rays I took in 1996. And I haven't seen this person in 7 years. And they felt like they had lost their correction and wanted some help. So we go through the files. Yeah, a lot of people that I saw way back then, I don't have their x-rays anymore. State law says you only have to hold on to x-rays because x-rays are a legal document. X-rays can be subpoenaed into court. You only have to hold on to x-rays for 7 years past the last time you saw that person. And so because of the number of people we see, I'm purging records all the time. But we have some for some people. And so this lady that I hadn't seen since before COVID. And immediately she got the response she was looking for, even though those pictures go back to 1996. And then there's other people. I about have to take a new film every 2 years or so because of the degree of damage in the neck and the fact that it can only regain a certain level of stability and recovery in that neck. All right, so I want to move on to some other things. I want to address sick pets. I've had some questions about that. I probably will save that to the next hour. What to do when your pet is sick? Do you have to be a vet to know what to do if your pet's sick. Does a mother have to be a pediatrician to know what to do for her sick child when they have a fever? Oh, the control, the massive control of big pharma. You know, big pharma, big food are right there neck and neck with big military, the military industrial complex, as far as their power and control of the federal government. I'm not going to say anything more than that because then I'll start getting political. So save that for next Monday, maybe. Anyway, I hope I haven't bored you. I hope you found this somewhat entertaining as well as informative. But if you want to give somebody a good Christmas gift and you think that they can't afford what I'm doing, at least the initial fee, you might want to get a gift certificate for them. You can get that at 801-523-1890. And this half price off, I'll tell you, there have been an awful lot of people during the month of December. I think we even started in November. We've taken advantage of that. All right, now I want to talk about this new study regarding tattoos because I get asked about that. And this lawyer in the Netherlands, who is now in solitary confinement because he has verbally attacked the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines. Hasn't hurt anybody, except perhaps the industry, but he's now considered a terrorist, and he's in solitary because he has verbally attacked using published research over the last several years, proving the COVID-19 vaccine is a bioweapon designed to depopulate the earth. Ooh, how dare he? And then the evidence is clear that even despite the super flu, allegedly the super flu that's out among us now, masks do nothing. And I think maybe I will spend the rest of this hour talking about that. Now, when we get to the next hour, I want to talk again about the detox and the purification stuff. We have people who are ordering the detox kits, the purification kits, so we can all start this together the first weekend after the new year, which would be obviously a week from this weekend. You have to order this stuff online. You'd get it in plenty of time. And I'll talk about that during the next hour. If you want to start the year out cleaning up your liver, cleaning up your kidneys, there are herbs, there are foods that are known to detoxify the liver. So I'm going to talk about that during the next hour too, but we still have a good 15 minutes. So we're being hit with the super flu. I talked to a lady Monday, 2 days ago, that said her family has been hit with the flu to where one of them in particular has the worst flu they have ever had. It's a teenage girl, I think she's 16. Hasn't been able to get out of bed for 2 weeks. And it's passed around to the entire family. And I've taken care of this. I've taken care of everybody in this family, mom and dad and all the kids. And so there, what do we do? What do we do about it? Well, I made my suggestions, the kinds of stuff I talk about here all the time when it comes to the immune system. Get her on Imuplex and Cataplex C immediately. And a couple other things I remembered, but Imuplex and Cataplex C. If you take Imuplex, you don't even have to take Catalin, because Imuplex is essentially Catalin with an extra power pack behind it for the immune system. But I said, this will bring her back online within 48 hours, just get her doing this. But she mentioned the word superflu. And I said, are you referring to what they're talking about in the marketplace now as the super flu? Because I've heard that mentioned on local Salt Lake City television. And she said, no, we just called it that in the family because it's just the worst flu she's ever had. Well, I want to address that because I have been going over this quite a bit since 2020. And then I went over it again in 2023 regarding masks. And I always love going back to Fauci. Wear a mask. Really, you don't need the mask. Oh, you better wear 2 masks. Just all that flip-flopping nonsense from one of the leaders of nonsense in modern healthcare, Fauci. And masks don't work. They have never worked. And prior to 2020, the academic literature on this is very, very clear. The academic literature, peer-reviewed literature on the efficacy of masks prior to 2020 has been very clear on the subject. In other words, when Fauci and Birx started talking about how we needed to be wearing masks and separated by 6 feet, because we all know viruses can't travel more than 6 feet. I was decrying that from the very beginning. Now, between 2004 and 2016, at least a dozen research, and you can go search it for yourself, or review articles have been published on the inadequacies of face masks, and all of them agree that the problems are very poor facial fit and limited filtration characteristics of the mask make them unable to prevent the wearer from inhaling airborne particles. Now, when I travel in the airport, as I did a little over about two months ago for a NUCA conference, and in a month I'm going down to Phoenix for a few days to teach NUCA. When you go through the airport, you see 2 basic types of masks. You see the type that is just really tightly form-fitting around the cheeks and the chin, as though they were fitted to that particular person, as though they went and had a suit made for themselves. And then you see the blue paper ones that are all open on the sides. You know, it's just hilarious. And so anyway, in this very well-referenced 2011 article on respiratory protection for healthcare workers when they're around sick people, Dr. Harriman and Dr. Brosseau concluded that, quote, face masks will not protect against the inhalation of aerosols. They also said this: healthcare workers have long relied heavily on surgical masks to provide protection against influenza and other infections. There are no convincing scientific data that support the effectiveness of masks for respiratory protection. It should be concluded then from these and similar studies that the filter material of face masks does not retain or filter out viruses. And why is that? Because viruses are so small that trying to get a cloth mask to stop a virus is like trying to get a chain link fence to stop smoke. So that study was removed from the website of the Journal of Oral Health, where it was before, in July of 2020, because it was no longer relevant to the current climate. That's what they said. The article that was showing the ineffectiveness of cloth masks to stop viruses was removed from its publication site because under the current culture, it's no longer relevant, which I guess is perfectly normal. Another study conducted in 2019, published in May of 2020, said this: Disposable medical masks are loose-fitting devices that were designed to be worn by medical personnel to protect accidental contamination of patient wounds and to protect the wearer against splashes or sprays of bodily fluids. There is limited evidence for their effectiveness in preventing influenza virus transmission, either when worn by the infected person for source control or when worn by uninfected persons to reduce exposure. Our systematic review found no significant effect of face masks on transmission of laboratory-confirmed influenza. Now, they didn't say that masks are not relevant or do not have a practical need when you're dealing with somebody sick who's spitting up all kinds of fluids. That's different than viral elements. If I was in a situation where I had to do some emergency procedures on somebody vomiting, puking, coughing, spitting, blood, or anything else, you bet I'd be reaching for a mask if I could find one. But these studies aren't about that. They're about viral transmission, especially of an influenza virus, and that masks have absolutely nothing to do with preventing it. In 2023, the Cochrane report, many of you are familiar with that because I've mentioned it many times. This is from the Cochrane report. Wearing masks in the community probably makes little or no difference to the outcome of influenza-like illness, COVID-19-like illness compared to not wearing masks, and wearing masks in the community probably makes little or no difference to the outcome of laboratory-confirmed influenza SARS-CoV-2 compared to not wearing a mask. Now, none of this is new information. I've talked about it for several years now. But they keep pitching the same lies. And I just have to keep coming back with the facts. I was in the hospital not too long ago on the deathbed of a friend. And I always take a survey in my own mind as I'm going through a hospital in today's date. I've been in the hospital for 3 different people this year. 2 who were dying and 1 that recovered. And so that's 2025. And so I kind of do a survey. Who's wearing a mask? Well, it kind of depends on what department of the hospital you're in. If you're in post-surgical, that's different than the ICU. If you're in the ICU, respiratory ICU, where people are with pneumonia or something as severe as that, you might want to wear a mask. Because if they're not on a respirator, they may very well be coughing up fluids. That's different than a virus. But other parts of the hospital, you won't find a nurse or a resident, especially the doctor, wearing a mask. Every now and then you'll see a member of the housekeeping crew wearing masks. I don't know if that's part of the job requirement or if they just are uninformed. Now, as I said, none of this that I'm telling you is new. When it comes to preventing disease, masks simply, they're not only not effective, they never have worked. And the science backs this up. There is neither an ideological position nor a moral position. It is simply rational, fact-based position. They don't work. And anyone saying otherwise is either misinformed, they have been ideologically captured by a greater power than they would grant themselves, or they're willfully dishonest, or some combination of all 3. Again, I'm talking about the transmission of viruses, not bacteria, not bodily fluids. Just as much as you would scrub your If you had to do emergency care to save somebody, and you got their fluids all over your hands, you would be in the bathroom very shortly thereafter, mightily scrubbing away on your hands. That is only common sense. And if they're vomiting or coughing up blood or spewing something here or there, you should put on a mask as soon as possible, if not goggles as well. Often that's not possible. It's not available. But when we're dealing with a so-called pandemic that's going to kill 200,000 Americans this year alone, 2020, which didn't happen. People didn't start dying until the vaccine came out. Yeah, there were comorbidity deaths from COVID-19, just as much as there are comorbidity deaths from the flu. And now, of course, we have the super flu. Because you're not getting your flu shots. You need to be a responsible citizen and get on down to Walgreens and get your shot. And while you're in there, get your COVID shot. There, I said what I need to say as a healthcare professional. Yeah, of course I'm being ridiculous. But I wanted to bring this up, the thing about masks. Now, I want to mention a couple of things about this poor fellow in the Netherlands. Because he is being detained under the accusation of terrorism. Because he has said, well, here, I want to read this news release to you here. In 2020, Dutch lawyer Arno van Kessel realized, now in 2020, that's almost 6 years ago now, Arno van Kessel realized that COVID-19 was being used by governments to exercise malign influence on populations and began vocally opposing both the Dutch government's pandemic response measures and the subsequent COVID-19 vaccines. For 5 years, despite character assassination and harassment by Dutch authorities, Van Kessel nevertheless initiated legal proceedings against the Dutch state and high-profile national and international figures like Mark Rutte, the leader of the EU, not the EU, but the European Union, Bill Gates, and Albert Bourla, who's the CEO of Pfizer, and others, together with his colleague Peter Stassen, on behalf of the Stichting Recht Oprecht Foundation, which is Rights to Rights Foundation, representing 7 plaintiffs, all who suffered negative health outcomes as a result of the COVID vaccinations. On July 14, 2023, Van Kessel filed a civil lawsuit at the District Court of Leeuwarden. And then he talks about who the defendants are. Actually, 17 individuals and entities. And the plaintiffs were alleging, Van Kessel, were alleging that the COVID-19 vaccine is actually a cloaked bioweapon, and that the alleged side effects are deliberately chosen effects. The lawyers accuse the government of committing genocide against their own people, noting that the legal definition of genocide includes infliction of serious bodily harm. So in their briefs, the plaintiffs want to hear under oath from 6 expert witnesses who can prove their allegations regarding the injections being a bioweapon. They want Professor Francis Boyle, you've heard of him, human rights lawyer and professor of international law, Catherine Austin Fitz, you know her, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Housing, Dr. Mike Yaden, you know him, a former top scientist at Pfizer, Alexandra Latapova, former pharmaceutical industry executive, and researcher Catherine Watt, and Dr. Joseph Sensoni, psychotherapist specializing in clinical hypnosis. One of them, Professor Boyle, co-wrote the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989. which was the domestic implementation for legislation controlling biological weapons. And Van Kessel and Stassen contacted Boyle January of this year. During the meeting, he agreed to testify, but 2 weeks after he agreed to testify, he died. I don't know the circumstances of his death. He was 74. Was 74 an odd time to just suddenly die? No. But given the circumstances, it is a little suspicious. So then, in September last year, Bill Gates challenged the court's jurisdiction, that the court had no jurisdiction over him. And the district court rejected that, ruling that Gates has to stand trial, making him the only defendant that was required to appear in person. The pharmaceutical companies didn't have to appear. Poor Bill Gates did, or was supposed to. So the court scheduled a hearing for July of this year to get into the substantive aspects of this case, marking the first significant progress after 2 years of delays, which were partly because of Gates's legal team submitting all the extensive objections and all kinds of scheduling conflicts. Then on June of this year, June 11th, 2025, Arno Van Kessel, who's been fighting this for 5 years, was arrested by the Dutch Special Intervention Service, the DSI. Is that their FBI? During the dawn raid on his house, he was blindfolded, arrested, and immediately incarcerated. His entire family was held at gunpoint. The house was searched for hours by a team of 15 agents. The action turned out to be won in a sweep of raids throughout the Netherlands, in which 8 people, designated sovereign citizens, were arrested. They have the same sovereign citizen argument there that we have. And so the DSI reported that during searches of the suspect's home, all of them included here, not all of them did they find the same stuff, but among all of them, they found some interesting things called firearms, ammunition, sedatives, potential explosives, and dangerous chemicals. They also seized phones and laptops that came to the same kind of stuff the FBI would do here if somehow some industry labeled you as a potential threat to that industry. They're going to send the FBI in to take care of that what you have to say or reveal doesn't get said or revealed. Because Van Kessel is in solitary confinement. Now, the Dutch authorities have not provided any evidence for the allegations against him. His wife has stated emphatically that her husband is wrongly associated with that particular movement, the sovereign citizens movement, and no specific allegation or evidence has been presented regarding Van Kessel's alleged involvement. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because it's in the Netherlands. Because we've had similar situations here. And once they get the next pandemic underway, which could be 2026, especially right around the July 4th, 250th celebration of America, you might hear the same thing here. So the judge is supposed to hear the evidence for and potentially rule that COVID-19 injections indeed constitute a bioweapon. That's the lawsuit. And of course, such a decision would have colossal criminal consequences worldwide for people. Same thing in this country. And the timing of this accusation against Van Kessel, that he's part of this terrorist organization or in some way conspired to commit terrorism, does seem a little suspicious. Now, the Dutch Bar Association disbarred Van Kessel at the end of July for being a suspected terrorist. And the crowdfund platform, GoFundMe, is still failing to pay the 70,000 euros in donations for his legal defense. And he is still regarded as a potential terrorist. And so the Dutch media, including professional legal journals, unanimously assumes his guilt while he sits in prison. And of course, in Van Kessel's own words, he's now been financially broken by the state. But interestingly enough, some new evidence has come to light that the man who anonymously tipped off the public prosecutor's office that Van Kessel was a terrorist may have a personal vendetta against him. And so Van Kessel remains languishing in detention, 3-month stretches of solitary confinement so far, which of course prevented him from being able to attend and hear a COVID-19 lawsuit that he's involved with. They did not let him out of solitary confinement to be a part of the hearing before the judge. So there are parallels. Rainer Fulmich, some of you are familiar with him, a German COVID-19 skeptic and lawyer. Fulmich was arrested in Mexico. He had to get out of Germany. Was arrested in Mexico in 2023, extradited back to Germany, charged with embezzlement stemming from the improper use of donations. And now he has been tied to the Reichsbürger movement in Germany, about which German security services have launched the early dawn raids against sovereign citizens who ostensibly are conspiring to overthrow the state. Because there are people who, when they hear this stuff, that their neighbor or somebody they know or somebody they have some respect for or whatever else has been picked up by the court because of something they question regarding the culture of COVID-19. Some really thinking people might say, well, what's wrong with them expressing their opinion? See, that's not enough. What they have to do is link them to terrorist organizations that are trying to overthrow the state. Now, I know a few sovereign citizens that I take care of my clinic. I never got into that. But I know some sovereign citizens who to this day still don't have a driver's license. While I have my own opinion regarding that kind of decision making, they certainly are not terrorists conspiring to overthrow the United States government. But when the media comes out and says that kind of stuff, then you have a tendency to believe, well, there's something more here than just questioning the COVID-19 vaccine narrative. They're actually bad people. They want to overthrow the government. And the average citizen does not look past the evening news. As you well know, that's one of the things I like about the K-Talk audience. You're not willing to take anything based on the value of the person who said it. You're going to look into it yourself. And now with the internet and with AI, oh my goodness, I've seen some stuff on AI lately that just blew my mind. Especially if you pay the extra money to go deeper and deeper and deeper. The kind of admissions AI will make that do not fit the government narratives. Now, all these reports that are being presented to the court are claiming that COVID-19 injections are indistinguishable from a bioweapon. They were developed and deployed as military countermeasures under Emergency Use Authorization, Operation Warp Speed, falling under military legislation and not under normal pharmaceutical regulations. They're claiming that through mutual recognition between the FDA and the EMA in Europe, the deception continues. In Europe, the shots are wrongly labeled as vaccines. Number 4, they offer no health benefits, they're not safe, and they certainly aren't effective. Number 5, they cause harm, including heart failure, cancer, and sudden death. And it is intentional by design. That's their claim. And they're part of a larger military depopulation and control system as a part of the Great Reset, in which NATO plays a role. And of course, under control of the former Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, who is the Secretary General of NATO. I said the European Union is NATO. So the defendants, except Bill Gates, do not want to hear from these experts, and they continue to stick to the narrative that they're safe and effective. Both cases, Leeuwarden and Van Kessel, are going to have oral hearings in 2026 where they suspect, in an honest setting, the judges can no longer ignore the mounting evidence that the COVID-19 was intended as a bioweapon to depopulate the country. Now, all the documents, all the videos are available should you be interested enough to see them. And I'm going to spell this out carefully. It's a YouTube channel. Anyone can use them for their own reason. The lawyers involved have all said all this information. It's kind of like open code. You do not have to pay for this information. You can have it for free if you are in a situation similar to Van Kessel. So with your pen or pencil, it's rectoprect.nl for the Netherlands. R-E-C-H-T-O, recto, prect, P-R-E-C-H-T, R-E-C-H-T-O-P-R-E-C-H-T.nl. One more time. R-E-C-H-T-O, recto, prect, P-R-E-C-H-T, one word, .nl. Now the main points. Well, you can read that for yourself, but there are links there to the presentation of the 5 experts testifying that COVID-19 vaccines are in fact a bioweapon designed to depopulate the planet. And you can see the presentations, the video presentations of the 5 experts that will be heard in oral arguments in the Netherlands in this coming year. Catherine Austin Fitz, Joseph Sansone, Catherine Watt, Mike Yaden, and Sasha Latapova. One more time, that website, RECHTO-PRECHT.nl. You may want to have that for your own research. All right, what time is it? 12 after the hour. I want to do sick pets, and I want to do the cleanses. But one thing I have to do, because I was asked about this, there was some information in the news that tattoo ink accumulates in the lymph nodes. And when I see teenagers, mostly girls, during the summertime, when they're not so heavily covered with sweaters and coats and long pants, they come in tank tops and shorts. And where I have taken care of them since childhood, now they're teenagers, so I know what's happened to the surface of their skin over those years because it's increasingly obvious. They're getting all kinds of tattoos. There's this one fellow in Lehigh that I take care of, that the tattoos on his body, and he works out. You would think you would call him fit, a fit male, a fit human species, because of his muscles and the apparent strength and health of his body. But he has thousands, literally thousands of dollars of tattoos. And on his calves, or his whole body. But specifically, the thing that I would see, because he would come in shorts during the summer, and if you stood 10 to 15 feet away from him, looking at his calves, they look like a photograph. The detail of these tattoos. And the artwork is absolutely beautiful. Well, it doesn't inspire me to get a tattoo. I don't have one, and I have no intention of ever getting one. But I asked him, I had to ask, how much did that cost? Oh, you don't want to know. I do want to know, because that's why I'm asking. Hundreds? And he said, thousands? Oh, you're getting warm. Lots of thousands? The tattoos that he has on his body, that he's accumulated over several years, right now cost him more than $10,000 of tattoo work. And, you know, if that's all there was to it, and you wanted to be the illustrated man, he definitely is. Now, he's a nice guy. We have a great conversation all the time about his developing children and what's going on in the world, and we just have a good time in the 5, 10, 15 minutes I'm working on him, and then he's gone. But I said, what do you know about tattoos triggering local and systemic inflammation? I said, I have to ask this. Before you did all of this stuff, are you aware that tattoos can cause systemic inflammation throughout the human body? And his immediate answer, because the ink will accumulate in lymph nodes, which the lymph nodes are the police station of the human body. So it diminishes the effects of immune cells when you have toxicities building up inside the lymph nodes. And even though the ink from a tattoo is put into a certain area of the dermis so that it stays there, it doesn't stay there, because your immune system recognizes this as not self. This is why over time tattoos begin to fade, even the most beautiful ones, because your immune system is constantly trying to clean that stuff out of the skin. Now, interestingly enough, a third of American adults, roughly 82%, or 80 million people, have tattoos. Now, there's this new study that was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. It says this: despite safety concerns regarding the toxicity of tattoo ink, no studies have reported the consequences of tattooing on the immune response. In this work, we have characterized the transport and accumulation of different tattoo inks into the lymphatic system using a murine model. Upon quick lymphatic drainage, we observe that macrophages mainly capture the ink in the lymph node. Now, the macrophages are the Pac-Man of your immune system. Chomp, 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 chomp. They're eating up dead cells, they're eating up bacteria, they're eating up viruses, they're eating up things that don't belong constantly. Even while you're listening to me talking, while I'm sitting here in front of the mic, my macrophages are constantly at work in my immune system, cleaning up what's not supposed to be there. Now, this study said an initial inflammatory reaction at local and systemic levels follows ink capture. Notably, the inflammatory process is maintained over time as we observed clear signs of inflammation in the draining of LN2 following tattooing. I don't know what LN2 is. I haven't taken the time to research that, but I presume it's one of these inks. In addition, the capture of ink by macrophages was associated with the induction of apoptosis in both human and murine models. Apoptosis is the programmed death of cells. Apoptosis affects all the cells of the body: bone cells, muscle cells, stomach, heart, kidney cells, They all have a prolonged period of time to be alive, and then they die. And they're genetically wired to die at a certain point in time and be replaced by new cells. So apoptosis was being affected by this in the sense that these cells were living longer than they should. You don't want cells living longer than you should. Then the crazy old people living next door to you living longer than they should. No, I shouldn't have said no. On the one hand, they said we observed a reduced antibody response following vaccination with a messenger ribonucleic acid, an mRNA-based severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus vaccine, which was associated with a decreased expression of the spike protein in macrophages. In contrast, we observed an enhanced response when vaccinated with influenza vaccine inactivated by ultraviolet radiation. Considering the unstoppable trend of tattooing in the population, our results are crucial in informing the toxicology programs, policymakers, and the general public regarding the potential risk of the tattooing practice associated with an altered immune response. Now, I have never been in a tattooing studio. I don't know if they have warning signs like you see on a pack of cigarettes. But they said here, many tattoo inks contain chemicals that have been classified as carcinogenic or cancer-causing by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Now, while black tattoo inks use carbon black, the colored inks have pigments designed for industrial applications that they use in plastics and paints. And more troubling, tattoo inks are far less regulated than pharmaceutical drugs. So there were these two important studies. A 2024 Swedish study tracking nearly 12,000 people found that individuals with tattoos had a 21% higher risk of malignant lymphoma compared to those without ink. And then a Danish twin study published earlier this year, tattooed participants showed higher rates of skin cancer. Dr. Krisha Khanna, dermatologist, medical advisory board at Codex Labs, said this: current regulations on tattoo ink ingredients are not sufficient. There is a growing concern among dermatologists. And interestingly enough, those who try to get their tattoos removed by laser, I had no idea of this until I read this study. Some warning signs include tattoos should look out for when monitoring their skin health, including persistent redness, itching, bumps, new pigmented lesions, color change, and ulceration and bleeding as a result of laser removal. Tattoos can complicate the early detection of skin cancer. If people receive a new or changing spot within a tattoo, get to a dermatologist. Now, after learning about the risks, some people's first instinct, of course, is to remove the tattoo. But this study showed that it could further increase the lymphoma risk, because among tattooed participants who underwent laser treatment, the risk of lymphoma was found to be 3 times higher. Your chances of getting lymphoma 3 times higher. And these findings align with the experimental studies showing that laser treatment breaks down the azo compounds, AZO, chemicals used to color tattoos, into potentially toxic cancer-causing substances. Now, when I think about that, that makes perfect sense, but I never thought about that before. Because when you're using laser and burning this stuff, you break down the chemical compound that prior to the laser treatment may not have been cancer-causing. But there are chemical elements in that compound that once lasers applied is broken free from the compound and are known carcinogenic compounds. Now, if you're already tattooed and you're concerned about what I'm talking about, the best approach is just focus on your overall health. Build your immune system. So when I have talked to patients about their tattoos because they asked me, I didn't volunteer it, I've suggested laser removal. I was wrong, according to this study. You increase your risk of lymphoma by 3 times, 300%. So the best thing you can do, tattoos or not, is to maintain a healthy lifestyle. That's also the best thing you can do to reduce your cancer risk, for certain. All right. Now, I want to talk about, what time is it? Almost half hour. These metabolic reset programs. Craig, if you're listening, you were in the office yesterday. We were talking about these things, the purification program and come on. And the detox balance program. The purification program is a 21-day. It provides a comprehensive plan for meals, for exercise, for supplementation, for hydration, and it has inspired so far across the country thousands of participants. It's a 21-day program. It purifies, nourishes, and maintains a healthy body and weight. It includes a variety of supplements that are taken daily, including nutritional shakes that offer essential whole food nutrition, available in dairy-free, chocolate, vanilla, whatever. And then a meal plan to go along with it. The Detox Balance Program is just 10 days. There's a 28-day program, but I recommend if you want to try it, you ought to do the 10-day program first, because that's what I'm doing. Balanced, safe, effective nutritional support for all the 3 phases of detoxification. But I've been using standard process products for over 2 decades. So I kind of personally have a jump on this. But my food choices haven't been the smartest 2025. And there's too many processed foods in my diet, or have been. Too much grain, too much sugar, that all have a certain toxic systemic inflammatory process. And I want to clean that out of me. I feel pretty good. I just jumped out of bed this morning, took my supplements, which is my breakfast, got ready for the show, and I've got a couple of emergencies. Even though I'm not seeing patients today, I've got a couple of emergencies I need to take care of coming in from out of state. And so I've got to go in there for that. And then, of course, the rest of the day is some last-minute shopping stuff. That I'm always a last-minute shopper. I don't know why, I just always am. Thinking there's going to be less of a crowd. Boy, is that ever wrong. But in this 10-day detox balance, they're very the shakes are really very tasty. And you're going to drink 1, 2, or 3 of them a day. There's a basic hydration exercise program, and it's a good source of plant-based magnesium. And there's in each of the shakes, there's 17 grams of vegan-based protein, which isn't the best protein, but during a detox program, it's not that bad. In fact, it's actually very good. And so the detox goes through 3 basic phases. There's the first one is called the unlocking phase, where the stored up in primarily in the liver and fat tissue, fat-soluble toxins are released and unlocked in that through a process of making them water soluble. They're much more easily to wash out of the body. The second phase is the highly toxic substances that can be produced by the first phase convert to non-toxic materials and become even more water soluble. This is something called the P450 oxidase detoxification system of the liver. Your liver is constantly detoxifying toxic material. But due to the volume of toxic materials that are in the foods we eat, especially processed foods, it can get a little backlogged. It may need a little extra help to clean itself out. That's what this is for. And that's why I'm doing the Detox Balance program, to clean out stored toxins and then finally eliminate them, cleaning out these toxins that have build up in the cells. I have done this program in the past, but it's been a while since I've done one. But I find these things sometimes are a lot easier to do if you do them kind of like a family, in a group together, where you can support one another. And then we can talk about it on the radio. Now, what time we got? It's 30. You would need to call, these things would need to be ordered directly, delivered to your home. I'm not going to have them in the office. It takes up too much room. And you can get it a lot quicker than me ordering it in and then having to ship it to you. You would go to forbiddendoctor.com and you're going to be looking for the SP Purification Program and the SP Detox Balance Program. All right. And we're going to start that as the people in my office personnel, besides myself, are the 2nd of January. And Craig, I know you were in there yesterday getting this stuff lined up for yourself to join us. All right, now we've got a half an hour. I want to talk about pets because I have been asked about this many, many times. Now, dogs respond differently from commercial foods than cats do. But dogs aren't a whole lot different than we are in many ways. Because our diet is the cause of most of our degenerative disease processes. And including most diabetes, most cancers, most kidney problems, most thyroid problems that affect us do so because of our food choices. And dogs, for some reason, now, and not that cats don't, because I know my pet cat, Lucy, can be very, very susceptible to food changes. But dogs have a wider variety of what they eat than cats do. And so if you have a dog or a cat, the odds are that it is going to suffer and die too young due to pet foods and drugs and inoculations and vaccines. And so I have a list here of some of the shocking truths from the front lines of veterinary medicine published. And these are things that I have picked up over time from vets that I take care of, that I've asked questions of in the past. And there's one vet in particular, just an interesting fellow. I started taking care of him while he was still in high school. He's a wrestler, and he was injured in high school wrestling. Just a lot of back pain problems. And so I watched him through high school. I watched him through his undergrad at the University of Utah State, and he became a vet. And then he decided to specialize in hip replacement surgery for dogs. And he has a specialized practice in Dallas. And what he does is hip replacement surgery for dogs. It never occurred to me. It never occurred to me until I was talking to his parents one day. Oh, how's he doing? Oh, his surgery work is surgery. What surgery work? I thought he was a vet. Now, that's my ignorance of veterinary medicine. Oh no, he specializes in hip replacement surgery for dogs. But I got some of my information from him while I was still taking care of him, but he's not local anymore. But the first thing you do with any sick pet, as you would with a sick child or an adult, is immediately switch to a raw diet. This is sometimes very difficult because pets, like people, become addicted to nutritionally dead but tasty food. In the end, when it comes to sick pets, everything is diet, and diet is everything. I know that with my little cat, Lucy. I finally figured out, and it's taken me 3 years, how to feed that cat so that she has the soft coat that I want, decreased shedding, and more vibrant activity out of her. There was a point where she was having a hard time getting up on the couch. She has no problem getting up on the couch now. Or my bed. She sleeps right next to me in my bed. I know that's not the most hygienic thing. If you have pets, you have parasites. If you don't have pets, you still have parasites. But if you have pets, you've got more parasites than those who don't have pets. And to have her that close to me at night, what do I do about it? I just build my immune system. A lot of the supplements that I take every day are designed to build my immune response. And so, to repeat myself, the first thing you do with any sick pet is immediately switch them to a raw diet. Now, many animals are sick and toxic from a history of prescription drugs and annual vaccines, the same as us. And their loving guardians devotedly make sure they get these treatments because they are taught to believe that these inoculations, vaccines, are good for their pets. In fact, there are many veterinary clinics that will not take your pet if it's not vaccinated. Just as there are many pediatric offices that will not take your child as a pediatric patient unless they're vaccinated. That's the power of the programming. Now, cancer is now the main cause of death in pets. Cancer in some areas of this country has superseded heart disease as the number one cause of death. Certain counties around the country have greater deaths from cancer than heart disease. Cancer is the number one killer of pets. Now, this is followed by autoimmune diseases, diabetes, thyroid disease, and kidney disease. Same as with humans. These health problems were very, very rare in the veterinary world prior to 1940, when the pet food and the pharmaceutical industries began to get a stranglehold on how to take care of a pet. Too many vets vaccinate sick animals, despite the vaccine label forbidding this practice. Just as you never vaccinate a sick human being. But look at what happened with COVID. Oh, you got COVID, go get a vaccine right away. Vaccines are incredibly immunosuppressive. You know what that means. It suppresses the immune response. In other words, the policemen that occupy your lymph nodes, protecting you from bacteria, go on strike for a few hours to a few days, making the opportunistic infections more likely from bacteria that's hanging around, waiting for the policeman to go to sleep. Vaccines put them to sleep. And when you're sick and the bacterial load has already got a hold on you or your pet, and you vaccinate it, you're going to have a sicker pet. maybe a dead pet as a result, because the insert with the bottle of vaccine, the vial, do not vaccinate a sick animal any more than you would vaccinate a sick human being. Sick animals routinely die within 30 to 60 days following these vaccinations. If they're already sick, for whatever, kidney problems, thyroid problems, heart problems, or cancer, and they get a vaccine, routinely almost, they are dead within 60 days. Many holistic vet clinics are anything but holistic. The holistic buzzword brings in more business, but other than being open to alternative procedures, very few vets are holistic. I've noticed that with dentists. Now, I have a holistic dentist, Dr. Wall up in Bountiful, who has taken care of my teeth, and then Dr. At Total Dental Care in American Ford. It's right there on the tip of my tongue. Oh, geez. Two holistic dentists that I have no problem referring patients to. Every now and then I get a request. Who should we see dental-wise? Well, what are you trying to get done? Because that has an awful lot to do with who I would recommend. You know, it's just like somebody saying, well, I need surgery. Who would you send me to? Oh, what kind of surgery? And so I'll have a patient say, well, I see a holistic dentist. Well, good. What's holistic about it? What are they doing that's different than previous dental work of somebody that you might not consider to be holistic? And they can't really come up with a good answer, just that the dentist calls themselves holistic. And I said, well, you know, do they use ozone treatment? Well, what's that? Do they ozonate the water they use to clean out the debris? Do they introduce ozonated water at the same time they're doing dental work? Do they restrict the use of antibiotics as much as possible and suggest alternative nutritional support instead? Do they use carbocaine instead of lidocaine when they're anesthetizing you in order to stimulate bleeding? You know, different little signs of holistic dental work. There's more than that, but that's some of them. Well, a lot of holistic vets, same thing. They'll still inoculate any chance they get. Most natural and holistic pet foods on the market are garbage. Now, I give Lucy raw macerated chicken. It's actually made on Minuteman Drive here in Draper. And it's made in mass quantities, and it has organs, and it has bones in it, because my cat needs the calcium from these bones. And I've been feeding her this ever since I got her 10 years ago. And I've had to learn how to feed her and when to feed her. And when I do it right, she just gobbles this stuff down. And then you know what she does? She goes to sleep for 12 hours. Just knocks out and gone for 12 hours. Then she gets up, stretches, wants to snuggle, sits in my lap, purring, pawing at me to pet her for about an hour. Then she'll go eat, and you go back to sleep for hours. Lions in Africa, in the Serengeti, sleep on average 20 hours a day. They spend 4 hours hunting, killing, and eating. And then they sleep for 20 hours. That's not unusual for cats if they're fed correctly. They don't sit there and, you know, and just have a generalized bad attitude. There is a book, if you have cats, there is a book called Pottinger's Cats. You can get it at Amazon. Pottinger's, just like it sounds, Pottinger's Cats. He was a medical doctor in Laguna Beach, and he was the Atkins diet before Atkins. And he was the man that the Hollywood moguls would send their starlets to, who were putting on a little pudge. And because they were employees of the studio, unlike contract actors today, they had to do what the studio told them to do. And they would go down to Laguna, and he would put them on a low carbohydrate, high protein, high fat diet. 6 weeks, they were back to their movie shape and were back up in Hollywood. But he did some experiments with cats. And he experimented on literally hundreds, if not thousands, of cats with diet. And in this book, Pottinger's Cats, am I running out of time? No. In this book, Pottinger's Cats, he studied 4 basic diet programs with cats to see what happened to them. And he had a reputation for needing cats. So when animal control would pick up loose, free cats, they would take him to his clinic. And he had a massive area behind the people clinic for the cats. And he broke the cats down into 4 groups. The first cat was fed nothing but raw meat and raw milk. The next group of cats, if I remember this correctly, was fed pasteurized milk and raw meat. The next group was fed pasteurized milk and cooked meat. And the 4th group was fed condensed milk, which you know is just 50% milk and 50% sugar. Nobody drinks condensed milk, but you use it in some of your baking. And he recorded weight. He recorded texture of the coat. But more than anything, he recorded behavior. And the cats that were fed raw milk and raw meat would eat and sleep. And every time a female was in season, man, they would mount that female as fast as they could, the tomcats would. Because reproduction is always a sign of health. The urge to reproduce is one of the primal directives inside a mammal's body, including us. And when it's not there, you're not healthy. It's pure and simple. If you've lost your libido, you're not healthy. And so this was one of the things he monitored in these cats. In the next group that had pasteurized milk and raw meat, they were getting a little anxiety filled. They still looked healthy, they still act healthy, but he could tell that there was a difference in weight gain or weight loss, hair loss, and general behavior with the other cats that were in the cage. These were big open cages. I think they were like 15 feet by 15 feet with several cats in there. In the 3rd group, pasteurized milk and cooked meat, constantly bickering, fighting, just all kinds of racket coming out of that cage. In the 4th group, fed condensed milk, climbing the cage, hair loss, constant fighting to the death in some cases, just horrible results. But not only was he monitoring these cats, he was monitoring the next generation that came from them. In the 1st group, raw milk, raw meat, healthy kittens that went on to behave like their parents. And those kittens had healthy kittens. And those kittens had healthy kittens, as long as they were fed raw milk and raw meat. The next group, pasteurized milk, raw meat, produced a generation after them, but they began to notice there were little changes in their hip structure and their behavior. And their kittens magnified those changes. The third group, pasteurized milk, pasteurized meat, did not reproduce in some cases. In some cases, they reproduced sick kittens. Those sick kittens could not produce another generation. The fourth group, just utter nonsense. They could not reproduce whatsoever. What do we learn from that? There are certain kinds of foods, certain kinds of mammals should eat. And when they get outside of those prescriptive diets dictated by Mother Nature, you're going to have problems. So I feed my cat raw meat in the morning when I leave the house. There's a couple of tablespoons. She's she's only about 9 pounds. What's called a medium gray. Cutest thing in the world, but she's probably was the run of the litter. I don't know where she came from. She adopted the family. We didn't adopt her. She adopted us. And I don't know how old she is, but I suspect somewhere around 13, 14. She can still jump up on my bed. And she has a very calm demeanor, except about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning when she wants to play. I feed her raw meat in the morning. And when I get home at night, that raw meat is gone, and I give her some kibbles. I have shopped carefully for the right kind of kibbles. How do I know she's got the right kind of kibbles? Because she does her business in the litter box, not anywhere else. She doesn't overly drink water. Now, you're going to have to forgive me for a second. I have to run away for a moment because I want to go look at the label of these kibbles, because I can only find them at Whole Foods. But for those of you who have cats, and you might be inspired by what I'm saying, because I'm talking to you as seriously as I'm talking to you feeding your children, I want to tell you the name of it. So hold on. For those of you on the stream, I'm going to show you the picture. It's called Whole Paws. P-A-W-S, Whole Paws. Grain-free salmon and pea recipe. No grain whatsoever. So as I read the ingredients, salmon, fish meal, peas, turkey, garbanzo beans, chicken fat, pea fiber, flaxseed, dried plain beet pulp, natural flavor salmon oil, and then it goes into a few dried vegetables, a few dried fruits, crude protein up to 30% per serving. She wolfs this down like there's no tomorrow. So this is what I feed her when I get home, a couple of tablespoons of these kibbles, because the raw meat's gone. She ate that. So I give her a combination of both of these. Why don't I just give her straight meat, raw meat? Because I've done that in the past. Because a diet of raw meat makes her like the first group in the Pottinger's cat study. When she wants to play, she wants to play, and she does not follow my schedule. And she loves to just snuggle and wake me up in the middle of the night and paw at me till I get up. Why don't I put her in another room by herself at night? Because she'll whine and cry for me. I've spoiled her as bad as I've spoiled my children. But I just wanted to tell you, it's Whole Paws by Whole Foods Market. No corn, no soy, no potato, and no wheat. Because cats are not designed to eat that stuff. Cats are designed, the whole feline species, are designed to eat raw meat. Now, that's not the case with dogs. Dogs are omnivores. Dogs do well with other foods besides raw meat, provided you're very careful about it. So, when you see natural, holistic pet foods in the grocery store or Petco or some of the pet supply places, read the labels. No corn, no soy, no potato, and no wheat. And of the first 7 or 8 ingredients need to be animal-based proteins: fish, chicken, mouse. Lucy, my little cat, was the healthiest when she could eat 3 or 4 mice a day. She doesn't live there anymore. Now, anything can be legally put into a natural pet food, including roadkill, including euthanized animals, by law, can end up in a natural pet food. Read the label. Now, vets are too busy treating pet emergencies and pet trauma, unfortunately, to get too involved with nutrition for cats and pets. Because I have talked to my patients with pets, what did the vet recommend? Every now and then, there's a vet that is very, very particular about the kind of food he recommends. And it's in line with what I'm talking about. But I've had patients tell me, and this is over almost 30 years, you hear these stories and they kind of accumulate in your memory so that when these questions come up, I know some pets have recommended, oh, all pet foods are good. Pet food manufacturers make sure that they're good because they want the business. Well, that's ridiculous. That's just like saying all breakfasts are good for humans. Almost none of them are experts in the field of nutrition because they're too busy taking care of emergencies. And the majority getting an hour or so of education from visiting pet food salespeople, just like the pharmaceutical salespeople that show up in a medical office. Now, real nutrition and homeopathic supplements can produce rather miraculous cures in pets. Everything from hip dysplasia to mange. Standard Process has a line of dog and cat supplements. My cat, Lucy, gets 3 different supplements: whole body nutrition, kidney nutrition, and bone nutrition. And it's in her raw, I mix it in her raw meat every day. Same thing is available for cats. And interestingly enough, Standard Process makes a whole line of equine supplements for horses. And I have no problem recommending that kind of stuff for your pets every bit as much as I do for your children. Now, as for supplements, you can give a sick dog or a cat Catalin. Same thing I recommend to humans. The basic vitamin mineral nutrition. Give them, anywhere from 3 to 12, depending on how heavy, how big they are. And then if they have any bone or joint or muscle problems, give them calcifood wafers. The bigger the pet, the bigger the dose. The same thing that I recommend for osteoporosis, the same thing I recommend for bone problems in adults. Same thing for cats. They're mammals. Our nutritional needs are very similar. All right, we're coming to an end here. I'm going to stop the recording at K-Talk, and I'll save it under today's date. And I'm going to save it under mask, tattoos, and pet food. And that is now stopped, and I'll save that. And then for those of you on the stream, I appreciate your having been a part of the program. I'm going to bring that to an end, and then at K-Talk, I'm going to restart or continue to play the program that was playing with Paul Jensen before I got on air. So that's going to take it. Merry Christmas. I hope you have a good time over the next several days, because that is my intent, to finally relax, not go in the office except for emergencies, and just take it easy for a few days. But I'll be back again next Monday to pick up the good work of finishing out 2025. So those of you on the stream, I appreciate your being a part of the show. If you can like and subscribe and refer or share, whatever it's called. We're approaching 900 subscribers. I really appreciate that for the health show. Political show, not so much. I think I offend too many people. But the health show is different. So I'm going to end the stream.